A theory that's been making rounds in concern to the world of Fallout 4 is this: is the sole survivor actually a synth? And is the wasteland we find ourselves traversing actually real? In today's video, we'll be exploring this topic. Welcome to the video. You're listening to Phil of Philby Gaming. If you enjoy the following, you all know what to do, and if you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed already, after watching, please consider doing so. With that being said, and please be aware that there will be major spoilers ahead for the narrative, let's begin. So in case some aren't quite familiar with what synths are, let me give a brief breakdown. Synths are synthetic humans, a machine created in the labs of the Institute, one of the factions of the game, intended to replicate human life. There are several models of the synth, Gen 1, 2 and 3, with the latter being the most advanced, mimicking human behaviour almost down to a T. The Gen 1 and 2 are servants of the Institute, with duties such as cleaning, general repairs, and if needed, lend a hand in combat, and the Gen 3 are spies. But the question is, why? Over time, the citizens of Boston have become aware of the Institute and often blame them for kidnappings and such. They've become the boogeymen of the Commonwealth, so the Institute created these advanced machines to infiltrate the world above, with intentions of relaying information back to their creators. Basically, the purpose of all three gens of synths are both to serve and protect the Institute. But why would they need protecting? Sometimes machines malfunction. A synth's mind can often become confused. This was evidenced during a massacre in Diamond City, later named the Broken Mask Incident. A full rundown of the occurrence can be read in Piper Wright's newspaper report, but in a nutshell, while drinking at the Central Bar, now the Noodle Stand, a patron fairly new to town named Mr. Carter began to experience facial twitches. It soon became a reality that something was not right, as the patron unprovokingly began to open fire on the citizens of Diamond City, killing 8 innocents in the process before being put down by security. Upon inspection of the corpse of Mr. Carter, it was revealed that instead of a brain, he was instead made of plastic and wires, cementing the terrifying reality that the Institute was not only real, but had infiltrated the Commonwealth. Now, the Institute's reasoning for this, as explained later, was to protect themselves. You see, the Commonwealth is not only full of bandits and marauders, but dangerous factions, each with their own respective beliefs and way of doing things. We have the Minutemen, a group of saviours who wish to preserve the lives of as many of the Commonwealth as possible. The Railroad, a faction whose primary purpose is to free as many synths from the clutches of the Institute, believing themselves to be freeing slaves. And the Brotherhood, a militant-type group who's hell-bent on destroying anything they feel is a threat to the Commonwealth, whether that be ghouls, super mutants, or the Institute and their synthetic human infiltrators. But what else do we know about the Institute? Well, for starters, we're aware that they use the memories of the deceased and implement them into their machines, with the machines believing that they truly were that person. For example, Detective Nick Valentine, a clear synth who resides in Diamond City and has the memories of a former detective under the same name. But our video today isn't about Nick Valentine, nor the factions of the Commonwealth per se, it's about the sole survivor, and if in fact they are one of those advanced Gen 3 synthetic humans implemented in the world of Fallout 4. So let's take a look at some evidence that potentially may support this theory, however concrete or outlandish it may seem. The first hint given to the player that the sole survivor may be an Institute synth is found in the Far Harbor DLC of the title, in a question presented to us by Deemer, in which he asks if the protagonist is an Institute creation. Deemer also asks the player of their memories before the bombs fell. To that we have very little. This could simply be video game logic, but we'll come back to this. This is what opens up the theory for many, but there's more than just a short conversation to be discussed. The day the bombs fell, the sole survivor and their family are ushered into Vault 111 for safety. From here, we are cryogenically frozen for many years, temporarily being awoken as our spouse and child are interfered with Sean being kidnapped and the spouse being killed. Interestingly, Kellogg, the security personnel behind the murder and snatching, takes a moment to interact with us, making us aware that he's keeping us alive, calling us the backup. This is later explained by the father, the leader of the Institute, towards the latter stages of the title, citing that the Institute wished to find an uncontaminated human DNA subject to perfect their synthetic humans, but it could be something different entirely. We'll come back to this in our ending theory portion of the video. We then reawaken over 200 years later as the only survivor of the vault and enter this vast wasteland with one goal: to find our son, Sean. But before we head up top, there's a piece of evidence that some may have not put together. Obtaining the Pip-Boy device, the sole survivor is able to enter VAT mode, the Vault-Tec assisted targeting system, a feature which slows down time and allows us to pinpoint targets. But as we traverse through Vault 111, even before obtaining the Pip-Boy, the sole survivor already has this feature, a similar ability created by the Institute and implemented into their synthetic beings. This is hardly a trick they may have learned during their military service. Also, the sole survivor has a bit of a knack of acquiring new skills and abilities. Now of course, this could be further put down to video game logic, but it's food for thought. How would uncovering new locations, completing quests and killing undesirables grant the player the ability to find more bottle caps and containers, create more powerful upgrades on weapons and armour, and even randomly spawn in the mysterious stranger? It just doesn't make sense. Up top, on the surface of the wastelands, things continue to logically not make sense. The world in which we awaken is greatly exaggerated. People have survived over 200 years, now ghoulified. We have mutated beings as well as animals, a family who never age due to a mysterious serum, and of course, we later learn of teleportation, a strategy used by the Institute to travel between their facility and the Commonwealth. It's all truly far-fetched, almost as if the entire thing is not real. We also coincidentally meet people from the day the bombs fell, such as Codsworth, our household butler, and the Vault-Tec rep, a salesman who's refused access to Vault 111. It seems too high of a coincidence to run into these people 200 years later. We do meet others from the past who swap stories of their time before the Great War with the sole survivor, but they don't really give any information. They seem to purposely avoid questions and implore the player to tell their memories of the past instead. During the opening segment, we can interact with the dog bowl at the home of the sole survivor, and upon doing so, we learn that the family pet went missing prior to this. Now very shortly after we emerge from the vault, by canon we're introduced to Dogmeat, a faithful companion who sticks by us through thick and thin. Is this considered to be coincidental? Or did the Institute do their best to ensure that the sole survivor would meet the canine, knowing that they would adopt? This stems from the theory that Dogmeat is an Institute plant sent to keep an eye on the player. This theory can also attribute to the other companions we meet along the way. Most of the time, they all seem to need rescuing, whether it be from an argument or a violent encounter. It's as if the Institute is testing not only the capability of the sole survivor, but their conscience too. Will a synth produce empathy and caring to their fellow wasteland survivors? We could also speculate that we are being tested further in regards to this, such as when we meet Billy, a young child who survived the initial blast by locking himself in the refrigerator, where we are assigned in returning into his family. Once again, it's a moral choice for the sole survivor, where they are given a secondary option to sell the child instead. One aspect in regards to ourselves is the ability to avoid death. If the sole survivor takes too much damage, they will of course fall, but despite how much damage they sustain, we're always given the option to start over, as in some form of simulation. It's as if the Institute wants us to continue to see how far their creation is willing to go. One piece of evidence that I want to produce before we head into our final thoughts and theory explanation, although I'm sure I've probably missed quite a bit, is the limited dialogue options we're presented with. During each conversation, we're only granted with 4 separate lines of response to choose from. Now of course, and I feel like I'm repeating myself a little, this statement could sound harsh to Bethesda, as they've given us free reins in concerns to our sole survivor and their characteristics, and yes, this could once again be video game logic, but it could also be perceived that the limited dialogue options are due to the fact that they were the only ones implemented to the synth, somewhat limiting their ability to speak freely, very similar to how an android would work. It can only replicate what it's been programmed to say. So with all of the evidence produced today, let's discuss our final thoughts on the subject, as well as a potential explanation of the theory. The Institute wanted to create the perfect synth, replicating the human form in not only physical appearance, but mannerisms and behaviour too. The sole survivor is simply a test subject. Referring back to the protagonist being suspended in a cryogenic state, the common purpose of a cryogenic state is to preserve the human brain for the future. The Institute could have randomly chose the character of Nate or Nora as a test subject, giving a synth their memories, just as they did with Nick Valentine, and may have simulated the kidnapping with the purpose of seeing to what lengths their latest creation would stretch to if they believed their spouse had been killed and their child kidnapped. The theory also stretches to the wasteland itself, as mentioned before. It's over-exaggerated and unrealistic, almost as if the entire setting was a simulation created by the Institute, testing the fortitude and willingness of their synth, using portions of the soul survivors' memories and recreating aspects of this in this now barren wasteland. Also think about the primary factions of the world, the Minutemen, the Railroad, and the Brotherhood of Steel. Each represents a characteristic of the protagonist's past and could have been fictionalized in this simulated setting as a secondary test for the sole survivor to see which faction they would side with. Would it be the Minutemen trying to do good in the world, the Railroad trying to free the oppressed, or the Brotherhood, which may very well represent the family's military service, finishing with one final boss battle, the Institute? Just how would a synth react upon finally confronting those who had killed their loved ones and kidnapped the only family member they had left? The character of Kellogg may have simply been a further test too, as the Institute wanted to see the soul survivor's reaction upon confronting the kidnapper and murderer of their family, potentially as an early test before they reached the Institute. They wanted to prepare for what's coming. The Institute formed a character with the memories of a loving father and husband, one who as human will go to the ends of earth and time to seek revenge on those that had wronged them. But why not monitor a human instead and later mimic their behaviour by replicating it into the brain of a synthetic human? Simply put, risk. A human wouldn't have the capabilities of a synth, such as the ability to start fresh upon death. A human couldn't be brought back to life, as where a synth could easily be reprogrammed. So today's video was definitely out there and far-fetched, but it's something I've wanted to create for some time now, and I enjoy getting it out there, just as I hope you enjoyed watching it. If you did, you all know what to do, and if you're new to the channel and haven't subscribed already, please consider doing so. Let me know your thoughts in the comment section to this theory. Do you agree? Is it plausible, or is it way off? Or do you have an entirely different theory to the sole survivor? Be sure to share. Thank you all for watching. You've been listening to Phil of Philby Gaming, and I'll see you in the next video.